Greetings. I'm Lissa Power-deFur from the Communication Sciences and Disorders program. And I'm here with my colleagues to talk to you about a process we used last summer of 2013, to review and revise our syllabi. The reason we did this is that all of our graduate courses are governed by certain accreditation standards, and those standards had recently changed. The standards come to us from the Council of Academic Accreditation in Audiology and Speech and Language Pathology. And there are 190-some standards that are there for all graduate programs in communication sciences and disorders to make sure that they are implementing. One of the primary ways we see them implemented is in the syllabi. That the expectations of the Council of Academic Accreditation are that we include certain things within our syllabi. These are some of the items that we had to identify that we are sure that our students are competent in before they leave our program. So these expectations assume competency clinically, and they are competency in prevention, evaluation, and intervention. And this is across the 9 major disciplines of communication sciences and disorders: articulation, language, fluency, voice, swallowing, cognitive communication, social communication, communication modalities, and hearing. These would be relevant for children across the age span from 0 through adulthood, and then for adults through their years of senescence, their senior years. These expectations need to be present in the academic curriculum as well in their clinical preparation. But that's not all. We also need to assure that our students meet competency in oral and written communication, in their ethical and professional behaviors as well. So, when we saw the opportunity for an assessment grant, we realized that the timing was perfect because we needed to be reviewing our syllabi as part of our accreditation artifacts, that we needed to go through the new standards and look at each graduate syllabus to identify, were we appropriately documenting the knowledge and skills in our student outcomes. Our accreditation standards also focus on the use of formative and summative assessments to document our student outcomes. So we did that review as well. The Communication Sciences and Disorders team, and we call ourselves CSDS, so you'll hear that term a lot. The CSDS team meets for a retreat every May. We review our student outcome data that they give us from our courses in a final focus interview. And then we use that for program improvement. Our major program improvement initiative in May 2013 was to revise our syllabi. So we set up a process that we are going to be reviewing with you now. So to help you see where this fits into the accreditation cycle, our self-study period for accreditation of the graduate program is 2013-14. So we got a good head start by reviewing our syllabi in summer 2013. We will be submitting our application for accreditation in summer 2014, and we will have a site visit in spring 2015. Clearly, the course syllabi are some of the key things our accreditation site visitors will be using. So I'm going to go back to the very beginning of this and let you know who else is going to be talking to you today. That I've given you a little overview of the process, why we needed to do this, where the standards came from. My colleague Peggy Agee is going to be talking to you about formative and summative assessments. She is going to be followed by Michelle Norman and Shannon Sally. Michelle and Shannon will be talking to you about the process they used as faculty to review the syllabi in comparison with the standards. And then Ann Kralitas will be representing herself and Wendy Pulliam in talking about what they did in this review. We had a process whereby one faculty member did the review of the syllabus, made some revisions, and then another faculty member reviewed that to make sure that these standards were appropriately included. So you will hear from the group of us. Unfortunately, Wendy is not able to be here today, but you'll hear from 5 of us throughout this presentation. So with that, I'm going to move back through and move you on to formative and summative assessments with my colleague Peggy.
Hello, I'm Peggy Agee, and I am going to be sharing some information about summative versus formative assessments. This particular topic was one that we needed to become familiar with in order to do the work that was required insofar as reviewing our syllabi was concerned. If you're wondering why it was that we needed to become more familiar with summative versus formative assessments, it certainly is because we were required to. In order to demonstrate evidence of implementation of both summative and formative assessments as required by the CAA, we needed to become more knowledgeable ourselves about how this would play out in our individual courses. The way that we documented evidence of using both summative and formative assessments was through the syllabi and addressing the particular course objectives, identifying projects and activities which would fit under either category, formative or summative. So as we began to explore the topic of formative and summative assessments, we learned to differentiate them, to discriminate them, and so I'd like to share a little bit of what we learned in that review process. Summative assessments and formative assessments can be differentiated in how they look and how they feel to the student. For example, the summative assessments are probably the ones that are more familiar to us as instructors in that they are the high-stakes formal assessments which we typically use to be accountable to our students and also to be accountable to our programs, to demonstrate student learning across the semester and across the content. These assessments, though, tend to provide minimal feedback to students about how they are learning and how they are changing relative to the concepts and terminology of the course, because the goal is to evaluate the learner's present level of performance. Formative assessments differ in that they tend to be fairly low stakes. That is, there are very few course points allocated to these kinds of activities. They tend to be much less formal, more opportunistic. That is, the activity might be presented in the moment to provide an opportunity for students to demonstrate a particular concept or a particular understanding. There's a very high level of scaffolded feedback provided in that the instructor can respond to the specific level of student understanding. The goal of formative assessments is to track the student's progress toward learning the concepts. So it is a much more interactive kind of process. Both of these certainly are ways of determining how students are gaining the information that the course is designed to present, but each of them does so in a little bit different way. The Eberly Center for Teaching Excellence at Carnegie Mellon University has reported that summative assessments differ in both function and form. The function of summative assessments, as we've just seen, is really to evaluate student learning at the end of a period, at the end of a unit, at the end of a module, the end of the semester. So the form of these assessments is midterm or final exam, content quizzes, final projects, research papers, or perhaps a senior recital or portfolio. Formative assessments, however, are going to function to help the student and the instructor identify and target areas which require specific work on the student's part. On the way to doing this, it certainly assists faculty to identify the specific point at which students are struggling and where they might need specific support in order to gain the requisite knowledge and skills. The form of formative assessments can be as unique as the particular concept that's being explored and can also be creatively approached depending on the instructor's particular creative bent. But the form of formative assessments might range from drawing a concept map in class to show an understanding of a topic. It might require that a student write for 1 minute at the end of a lecture to summarize the main points. It could be submitting a proposal for a project or for a paper so that a student could get early feedback in the process. It could be responding to a writing prompt, such as, for me, the muddiest point about this topic or about the lecture was blank. or could be completing a Venn diagram, contrasting and comparing two particular concepts or topics. So a variety of different forms can be utilized to demonstrate formative assessment. And so I've included here the references that I used for this information. The big idea here is that because our Council of Academic Accreditation required that we demonstrate both formative and summative assessments on our syllabi in order to meet that accreditation requirement, then we had to get up to speed ourselves on what these different kinds of assessments would be and how they might be implemented in our individual courses. And now I'd like to share the podium with my colleagues Shannon Sally and Michelle Norman.
I'm Michelle Norman, and I'm going to talk to you about how the faculty review the syllabi to make changes. The CSDS faculty made changes to the course syllabi to reflect the changes in the CAA standards. First, we reviewed and analyzed each of the standards to determine which applied to each course. Then, course activities and assignments were created and/or revised in order to provide a measurable means of how each standard related to the course goals and how each was being met within the curriculum. A summary table that displayed a cross-reference of the course goals, the CAA standards, the activities, assignments, and examinations was completed as a template for each faculty member to use within the syllabi for each course. Once the table and the syllabi were completed, they were reviewed by faculty within the program. Feedback was given regarding each syllabus, and final revisions were made accordingly. The revised syllabi were implemented beginning fall 2013. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shannon Sally. I'm one of the newer faculty members here on the CSDS team. And so this task of reviewing the graduate syllabi for me was initially daunting. And I say that because it came at a time when we had other things we had to do as well, but also because our goal, the goal of our faculty was to assign syllabi to each other that was not necessarily in our comfort zone. For example, I teach the aphasia class, and so I didn't review any syllabi that might be medically based. I was assigned to review syllabi for our public school methods, our child language syllabi. So it was, our goal was to have fresh set of eyes for each syllabi, because we all know that when we're writing our own syllabi, we think that we're communicating clearly and concisely, but sometimes that's not the case. So I reviewed those syllabi, and I said initially it was daunting, but it actually turned into a very enlightening activity for me as a new faculty member, because I was able to see how some of the senior, and I don't mean that by age, I just mean they've been here longer, faculty members worded their policy and procedures, how they communicated their expectations to the students, and I was able to take that and apply that to my own syllabi to make it a little bit more concise, a little bit more clear, and make those expectations stand out more for my students, so there wouldn't be so many gray areas that I had experienced in the past. I also was able to see how my fellow faculty members incorporated some of those formative assessments. I thought I felt comfortable with the exams and the quizzes and those type of assignments, but the summative assessments were a little bit new to me, so it was a very rewarding experience, a very helpful experience for me to be able to take some of those summative examples and incorporate those into my syllabi.
Hi, my name is Ann Carlitos, and I had the opportunity to evaluate a number of syllabi in communication sciences and disorders. As a new faculty member, I continually seek new methods to improve my teaching skills and to maximize student learning opportunities. I have found that there is no better opportunity to learn than from faculty who are experienced. CSDS greatly values student participation and teamwork. Indeed, teamwork provides a cornerstone in the provision of quality speech-language pathology services across settings. In reviewing the syllabi, I was very impressed by both the depth and breadth of assignments that were cultivated to promote teamwork in students. The topics range from roundtable discussions to small group projects. Students were routinely required to participate informally in class as well, via discussion of course content material. As a result of this review, I now include class discussion and small group projects as a part of both undergraduate and graduate courses I teach at Longwood University. In addition, the syllabi I reviewed also encouraged students to incorporate a variety of multimedia in their assignments. The media included PowerPoint, video, role-playing, and 3D modeling as a means for students to teach each other about key concepts in course material. The ability to use a variety of means to teach is directly related to the treatment that we provide to a diverse clientele. For example, a method that works for one client may not work or be appropriate for another client. I believe that it is important for students to learn these valuable strategies, and hence I have begun to incorporate these same teaching strategies in my own courses. As an example, some graduate students enrolled in CSDS 625 voice disorders were asked to use video as a means to develop a vocal hygiene program for first graders. As a new faculty member, I found this experience and opportunity to be very rewarding. I have gained much knowledge regarding how I can improve my teaching skills and how I can further improve my own syllabi in ways that enhance student learning.
I'm stepping in for Wendy Pulliam, who couldn't be with us today, and Wendy was going to talk a little bit about how we connected with our adjunct faculty with this process. We are extremely fortunate to have two highly qualified adjunct faculty teach two specialized courses for us, one on craniofacial anomalies and one on augmentative alternative communication. And just because they are not Longwood employees does not mean that they were exempt from this process of needing to make sure that our syllabi were in alignment with the CAA standards. And so Ann and Wendy reached out to our two adjunct faculty, reviewed the process, and then worked with them in the revision of their syllabi and the review. So we were real delighted that the entirety of our curriculum has been through this process. Shannon Sally asked me just to remind the audience that the type of assessment she was talking to at the very end was a formative assessment. In conclusion, the CSDS faculty would like to thank the assessment group for giving us the opportunity to formalize our process of reviewing the syllabi. It was one of those things that we have to do periodically. We knew we had to do the self-study, but with the support of the assessment office, we were able to ramp it up to a higher level, and we are all feeling quite confident about the curriculum as we have completed this revision. Thank you very much.